Peace and love, my friend. Thank you for tapping in. Just a brief reminder before we get started that we record the Travelers podcast from Istanbul, Turkey, which is my new home. And the earthquakes that hit this part of the world have just been nothing short of catastrophic. A death toll that's difficult to wrap your mind around, countless more injured, people separated from their families, people without places to live, people without running water, people without adequate supplies. Like, this is a historic event in this century, and people are going to need help for a long time. It's not a quick fix. From day one on this podcast, we've been partnering with Zakat Foundation. The president of Zakat Foundation is actually from Turkey. ZF has been working on the ground in Turkey for over 20 years. They've also been working in Syria for the last 8 years. So they're really well equipped to deliver help right now. So go to zakat.org, zakat.org, put whatever you can down on earthquake relief, and know that you're taking part in something real. Let's jump into this episode. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Peace and love, everybody. I'm Brother Ali. You're you. This is the Travelers Podcast. We're here. Z Trip is here, the great DJ. We're very grateful for all of that. I'm trying my best to not reveal to you all of the sounds that are happening in my chest and in my throat and in my nose and, and in my heart. Dude, I'm just sick again. And I believe that the creator is writing everything and all of the things that are happening are the best of all possible worlds. And I'm grateful. I really, truly am. I'm not saying this to complain. It's also part of being patient is acknowledging what's going on. Part of being grateful, even with the challenge, to just acknowledge that the challenge is there. And so my family, like a lot of families, we've just been sick off and on these waves of upper respiratory stuff like influenza and pneumonia and COVID and strep throat and sinus infection, just waves of it going through our house. And so many people with kids that go to school all over the world are dealing with the same thing because the kids were in the house for 2 years, they were wearing masks. And already when they go to school, their bodies, one of the things they're learning to do is to deal with germs and infections and sickness and all this kind of stuff. They're making up for the years that they missed. And the particular day that we recorded this episode was meaningful because of Z Trip as the guest. When I started this thing, I reached out to all of my artist friends and some really big names, some people that I know. And they've all either said yes, or some of them have even asked me about it. There's people actually that I haven't asked yet because I know they don't like podcasts. I know they don't like interviews. But almost everybody that I know, I reached out to them. Every single one said yes. So it's one thing to get that yes. It's another thing with an artist whose calendar is full of them being on and giving themselves to other people in ways that actually feed their employees and their families and themselves and finance their dreams and schemes and everything in between. You know what I'm saying? To ask them, like, yo, can you sit down wherever you are and give me 2 hours of your voice and your time and your energy and your thoughts? And so I try to be thoughtful with people, and then hopefully, if we do get them to the place where they make a commitment, hopefully they come through. Almost everybody has. Z Trip was somebody that I know if I hit him up, he's going to hit me back immediately. And he's an enormous world class artist who is playing on all of the biggest festivals and stages and venues all over the world. And he's always been this way with me from the first time we met until today, no matter what he's doing. Like, people send me videos of Z Trip at Madison Square Garden on stage with LL Cool J, backstage at the Grammys, and yo, is that your sweatshirt from 2012? And like, yeah, he's wearing the hoodie from from the Morning in America album, or he's on stage at these big venues playing my records. And he didn't send me the video. It's just people sending me the videos. And I knew that if I hit him up, he would respond right away, say yes right away, lock in a time right away, and that he would be early. And all those things are true. So the day though that were set to record, I mean, he was having construction done on his house. And I woke up, y'all, feeling like I got hit by a truck, low fever and just headache and feeling a little dizzy and the chest and everything. But I said, man, this brother's coming through for me. And I just remember these years of building my career, and we got on stage many, many nights with fevers and with all types of stuff going on, sprained ankles and everything under the sun. And I said, man, come on now. If I had a show booked somewhere with Z Trip, I would be there and I would get on the stage and I would do my thing. And I would make it so that I was the only one that knew that I was sick. And so I came in, I got bundled up. It's a rainy Istanbul night. Just make it cinematic, but it's a rainy night. I came in and I did my thing. But by the time we got done, I was shivering. My fever spiked to almost 104. I was dizzy. Man, walking home, I almost called my wife and asked her, like, can somebody come and like walk home with me to make sure that I don't fall down or something? So I don't know if you can hear in this episode or not, but I was extremely grateful and happy and excited to talk to Z Trip because I hadn't talked to him in a long time, but I had to really fight through it. So, how are you supposed to describe Z Trip for anyone who might not know him and his work? I mean, in the most traditional sense, he is a world class DJ and he's incredibly unique. But he's more than that. He's also a musical director, he's also a composer and a producer, and he really is a curator. He started out like most hip hop DJs, just being in love with music and being in love with records. And what he does is bring together the different worlds of music that he genuinely loves through a hip hop lens and with a hip hop structure. So in his DJ sets, you'll hear AC/DC and Outkast and everything in between. There's blues music, there's house music. And he was one of the people that helped to popularize a style of DJing that they started to call mashup. He didn't create or invent that style, but he and a few others really helped to popularize it. And anything that becomes mainstream, you'll see versions of it that are really whack and corny and not necessarily true to the original spirit and intent. And as his reputation started to grow, both in the hip hop world and outside of it, I mean, this guy has done all of the biggest festivals, like I said, and all the biggest things around the world. One of the most respected, accomplished DJs around the world. But he started a collaboration with LL Cool J to the point where LL Cool J, as one of the greatest MCs, one of the greatest rappers, and greatest live performers ever in hip hop, when you see LL performing live, he is working with and alongside in partnership with Z Trip. I was really very grateful to have this conversation. We're brought to you as always by the Zakat Foundation and by BetterHelp online therapy platform. Enjoy this episode. Thank you so much for doing this, brother. I really appreciate it,
Of
man.
course, of course. Just put some dub delay on my voice. So when I'm talking, it's dope.
Oh man, that'd be hard, man. The sound.
Yeah. Just I can hype up every answer. Well, let me tell you.
And then we'll like duck the other stuff.
Yeah.
That like New York radio style of DJ that like duck the music whenever they talk.
Exactly.
Yeah, man. You really are deeply rooted in hip hop. It's in your DNA, it's in your bones. I've had conversations and I've seen you do your thing and I've seen you engage with people. And like, I know that you know that world very well. But then also it feels like the worlds that you bring together, that you really are of those worlds. And it feels really authentic. Like, man, everybody knows this like rock song. They know the hits, but nobody's heard these two things together. And also both are really from like deep within the trenches of living this music.
It's funny, man. When I got started, it was very much like just head down and do my thing. And at some point, I think early in the journey, I stopped. I looked up. I was like, wait a second. I run the risk of sounding and looking so similar to everybody else in how I do this that I need to figure out a couple things. One, how do I always say my thing is I like to stand out while blending in.
Mm.
If you're looking at a whole bunch of things, why is that one tilted? Your eye goes to that. I want to be that. I want to draw people to that, not because it's tilted, just because there's something different about that one that when I pick off the shelf, I'm like, wow, there's so much to this. And I realized because of my background and musically and influences, all the different styles of music that I was hearing as a kid, I was like, what I found myself doing is as a kid growing up, embracing all this music.
Yeah.
And once hip hop hit, I was so raw. I need to know all of this particular category,
Mm-hmm.
the culture, the everything about it. I need to study. I need to learn it. It speaks to me. I want to communicate with it. But at some point, I got so focused in on just this one brick of the wall
Mm-hmm.
that I stopped paying attention to the other bricks that made the whole thing. There was a part, I think, even collectively in hip hop where everyone was like, man, house music, whatever with house,
I
like
did that.
that ain't
Yeah.
hip hop,
House.
Yeah, we all did
Yeah.
that, and it was like we were all wrong. We were all so wrong, and I realized that. I think before everybody else, I realized like, wait a second, I have this allegiance to the boom and the bap because it is so part of my DNA that I would covet it to the point where it's like nothing else can speak to this and it was the opposite. What made it so dope is that it was all encompassing. We just got really selective and really like gatekeeper style, and that was the wrong approach, because if you think about it, like what are some of the most hip hop things that aren't in that blueprint? And I always go to Kraftwerk.
Yeah.
Kraftwerk is a German electronic
Right.
group that is not a hip hop group, but I could play you 5 songs that you'll listen to and go, that's hip hop.
Yeah.
And it's like, because they took this thing and they fused it into the thing and made it part of the DNA, that now it's a branch that goes over here, but it's such to the core. And my thing was, let's continue to make those inroads or outreach to other things to make the thing bigger.
Yeah.
Because if you are just sampling funk records or just sampling one style, you're only going to get a certain result.
Right.
It'll still be dope and you can still mess with it, but it's just like painting with more colors. If you're only painting with 10 colors, it's like there's 20 other colors you could add, and now you can speak. Now it becomes a bit more interesting. And that to me was always the thing that intrigued me and always drew me into how do I blend in while, standing out and making it a thing where when I show up to the party or I show up to the gig, I have all my stuff where I can,
Right.
if it's a room where they don't want any of that stuff, then cool, I can give them what they want. But if I can be me and I can blow their minds a little bit, I'm going to sprinkle in a little bit of Pink Floyd or Tool or some kids record or some just shit that makes people go, wait, why is that? How is that? And I just feel like the discovery part of hip hop was the thing that I was the most excited about. And when it became less about discovery and more about repetition,
Mm-hmm.
I got disinterested, and it made me want to go even further out to the discovery and leave. Like I could always come back to this, but I had to go out on these explorations into like the electronic world, drum and bass, house music, just anything that was so far away. And then let me keep one like little string and see if I could go all the way out to this planet, get a whole bunch of stuff, and then bring it back and see if I could tie that planet into our solar system and bringing these things in. So if you're someone like me or someone who's curious and maybe you want more than just what has been given to you, you get that little side dish or whatever, and it's like, yo, what is that, turmeric? Oh, what is that? Is that a curry? What is that?
Yeah.
What is that? It's a different ingredient. I don't know that.
And like, man, if I put this on the pizza, that might be crazy.
Yeah. It could be horrible though too. Like, let me also just say on the flip side of that,
right.
for all the ones that I try and I'm in the kitchen cooking, I'm like, horrible, horrible. Like, and it's an alchemy, man. And it's like, so there's a lot of trial and error, but like once you get it right and you serve it and you can hit it. The other thing too is I found that there, the youth in me was like, roll up on somebody and be like, that ain't hip hop. You ain't doing hip hop right, or whatever the elitist b-boy in me was like, that ain't right. I know all about it. You ain't doing it right.
Right.
Was like the wrong approach to be like, you know, if you want to turn somebody on to hip hop,
Yeah.
present it in a way that they could digest it and come to it, as opposed to like pushing people out and being like, you're not keeping it real, or whatever the things we were saying back when we were just young.
Right. Yeah.
But the thing is, the thing that I love so much is when I would do a show, I'd play a club or play a party, whatever it is, and you would get the bartender or the door guy or whoever who would come up to me and be like, yo, I don't really like this music, but what you did tonight, I like you. You're different. Something about you. And it's like, when you get someone who's sitting there for, 300 shows or whatever a year, and
Yeah.
it's just like completely tuned out, you know what I mean? And then you get them to go, what?
Yeah.
What's that? That to me is the ultimate compliment, because you've now roped somebody in. You've pulled them in a way where it's like, oh, here's a little bit of something. This is the tether that's going to pull you in
Mm-hmm.
and make your ears go up and go, oh, wait a second, what is that? Is that AC/DC? Okay, I know that, or whatever. And then you pull them in, and all of a sudden they're dancing and grooving to some whole other thing. And all it was just one little bit of bait that pulled them in.
You've got me like that 100 times. There's music that it's just part of my identity, that my name is Ali and I'm Muslim and I'm albino and I don't like so and so. And it's kind of like, okay, but what if there's a Rakim vocal over it? It's like, oh, oh man, this is actually ill.
It
You know what I mean?
it
I just
changes
always saw
everything.
it through a framework, through a framework of my own identity and like my own desire to fit into the world of hip hop. It was like my I had a certain type of like defensive insecurity about it. Like, what's that gonna mean about me if I like that thing? You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So the
Dude,
way you show that, it's deep, man. So me and my family, just like we live in Istanbul, and we just spent 2 weeks in Mecca and Medina. And so the thing is that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was hated by Meccan society. He had all of these people that were outsiders and outcasts and people from other places and other parts of the world. And he built this thing that was like really hated and detested and feared. But then it became their new identity. Like the whole Arabian Peninsula became like, we're Muslim, we are the home of Islam. Like people say the Mecca, like that's actual Mecca. You know what I'm saying? It's not the Mecca of comic books. It's Mecca. It's like El Mecca tul Mukarrama. But then what's interesting is that they started to have this feeling that like this is ours. Man, they have this feeling that like any new thing that gets introduced, any new understanding, any new cultural practice is a major threat. And I noticed that a lot of the time that I've spent in New York is people that have that same proprietary sense of like, if we just let anybody do anything, we're going to lose this. And I've heard you say, like, I knew that when you were a kid, you were in New York because I've heard you talk about dubbing Red Alert on the radio, like recording Red Alert and Chuck Till out of Mr. Magic and all those guys. But then I also know that you have some kind of connection as a kid or a young person to Arizona.
mhm.
So did you go back and forth, or was it
Oh
like,
yeah, it's the wildest thing, and I hated it as a kid, but into my teens, I learned how to embrace it, and now
mm,
an elder, I'm grateful for it because it taught me balance and in a major way.
mm,
The old kids book, the Country Mouse and the City Mouse, right? Like as a kid, like these two entities meet and they talk about their differences and similarities, whatever.
mhm,
So I grew up in Queens, right, in New York. I was born in Queens and grew up a little bit there, and then moved to Phoenix. Well, not Phoenix, but Arizona, a place called New River, which was 25 miles outside of the outskirts of Phoenix. I had a 1 mile dirt road to get to the pavement where the school bus would pick us up and drive us 45 minutes to the school, right? Like it was that going from being in Queens, having the Long Island Railroad right behind my house, and being surrounded by multicultural people, all ethnicities, all different foods, smells, taste, people, attitude, New York energy,
what
all
part of
these different
Queens? Like
things.
which neighborhood?
So it's Little Neck, which is like it's like right where Queens kind of stops. It was where I was. That's where I was born. Long Island Jewish Medical Center was the hospital I was born. Lived in Little Neck, so but technically Queens. You know what I mean? It's part of Queens, just right on the edge. But again, growing up in all this stuff and then moving to a place that was void of all of that,
Hmm.
was void of people, let alone different ethnicities, just people. The closest person was like a quarter mile away from us if I wanted to walk to the next house. You know what I mean? So it's just
Mm.
wild. But the thing is, my parents split. My dad stayed in New York. My mom stayed in Arizona. So I would go back and forth. And when I would go to New York, I would absorb all the culture I could, because when I went and I was living in back with my mom, there was nothing. So I had to gather, hunt and gather all the records, dub all the mixtapes I could, everything, because it was my connection to where I was from and the thing that was bubbling with culture. I had to bring all of that to Arizona and sit on it and digest it and play it over and over and pick it apart and everything until I could make my next pilgrimage to my Mecca. You know what I mean? It was
Right. Yeah.
New York was my, like, let me go and get source material and come back home and assemble and disassemble, and being in my home and hearing, like, MC Shen and EPMD and all these groups that had never, nobody anywhere in Phoenix knew who any of these people were. Maybe through a connection through California, maybe because like the Coast
This
was
is like mid 80s or late 80s?
this is like mid, 85, 86, right? Is when
Crazy.
I'm rolling around with tapes and I'm studying them, and it's like, and then I would go back to see my dad. It's like, oh, hey, it's Christmas break. Let me go back 2 weeks. I'm in New York. Every day is like I should be hanging out doing but I'm like in the trenches studying, cramming from my thing and bringing suitcases back with records, like spending any money. I worked at a gas station at one point in my dad had moved, so I was on, out in Long Island. We were, Sunrise Highway. I'm at a gas station working to try and make money to buy records, buy turntables, whatever. And that whole thing, the juxtaposition of being in both worlds,
Mhm.
was very interesting to me, because coming back to the desert and then being able to share this with people who had no clue, and being able to be the person who was curating it, not just like, here's everything that's here. It's me going, let me take all the good stuff and boil it down and give you these mixtapes or give you these things, and blowing kids' minds in Arizona who are like, what is this? What is going on? And then
Yeah.
doing these parties where I'm playing these records and people are like, who is this kid? What is going on? And it was that whole thing of, because I had one foot in each world, I got to understand also that whole world and how to rope them in with things that they understand, which is like, again, now we're talking, the opposite. Anything that was like popular 80s stuff or rock stuff, or, I never really messed with it much, but there were, this country and all these other styles of music that their parents had taught them. It's like, how do I rope these two together and give them something where they can understand what I'm digging? And there was a lot of common ground in things like the Beastie Boys with, sampling Led Zeppelin, and that's a Rick Rubin thing. And there's all these different, things where it's like he made things palatable for both worlds.
Mhm.
Run DMC and Aerosmith with Walk This Way was like the pinnacle of that, right? It's like, so I was kind of in a weird way doing a little bit of that on my own, but like these were the people who were creating this stuff, and I was just able to go, and it's funny too, because like, go into like junior high school, and all of a sudden I find myself living in all these different worlds with all these different people and being friends with all the different,
Mm.
I would chill and hang out with the black kids and Hispanic kids, and we would be swapping music, and I'd be like, yo, have you heard of Pink Floyd? You guys know about Led Zeppelin? They'd be like, what? I'd be like, yeah, check this out. You're gonna listen to Dark Side, listen to The Wall, just listen to that whole album, and like, you're gonna bug out. They come back to me, and some people be like, yo, other people are like, I don't mess with it. Then the flip side is I go and hang out with like the stoner kids and be like, yo, you guys ever heard of Curtis Blow? You guys like Fat Boys? Have you ever heard of it? Do you know anything about, Run DMC, or you guys ever heard of UTFO? And they'd be like, what? I'd be like, yo, check this out. And it's like, or whatever it was. And so I'm turning these different worlds on, but I always felt like that was because I was in this weird one foot in New York, one foot in Arizona, I had the ability to cross pollinate these two worlds together and be the conduit for that. And to me, that was what I loved about hip hop in the first place. Because when I listened to Red Alert or Marley or any of these guys, Jazzy J, any of these people, they were sprinkling in all these other things that when I would listen to the mix, it was the umbrella was hip hop, but
Right.
all the ingredients weren't necessarily one or the other. It was this melting pot of things, and that was what drew me to hip hop in the first place.
When you're talking about your original attraction to the drum, like you can't separate the drum from Africa, and the fact that all
Right,
human beings originate in Africa, like all of our ancestors are in Africa. Basically, the world, the human family is just are different people that left Africa and ventured around the world and started to adapt and things like that. And so for all of that to be able to be incorporated back into mom and dad, it's like mom and dad maybe have 12 kids and like, yeah, I got one kid that's a doctor, I got another kid that's a janitor, I got another kid that's hooked on drugs, I got one. But when they come back to me, they realize what they really all have in common. And
yeah,
to me, and all of this music that we're talking about in America is black music that started rhythmically, it started communally, it started as a way of meshing different worlds together and different opportunities and instruments and resources and like creating all of this stuff, man. It's a really beautiful thing. And man, early hip hop was so like that was such a important element of it from what I understand. Looking back at those records that like okay, it's not that much of a stretch to think that somebody would dig in their parents' correct collection and play a James Brown record B-side from 15 years ago and like yes, people will dance to this and like rappers will talk over this. But like, how did like Mountain, Long Red, and how did the Big Beat, and how did like these really obscure records? It's like they become hip hop records because Bambaataa says they're hip hop records, or whoever. You
right,
know what I mean?
right,
Like Cool Herc or somebody
right,
is like,
right.
these are all part of the same experience. Like
Yeah,
these are all the
we
same family.
absorbed that. That's what I'm
Hmm.
saying. That's the prism. We absorbed these things and made them. We made Kraftwerk hip hop.
Right.
It just happened that way. Kraftwerk didn't set out to be that. We did it,
Right.
and they're ours now. You can talk all the shit you want, but we're gonna stand in front. These guys are with us. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because we infused them into our DNA, and I think, I want to go back to something you said too. About the coveting of not allowing certain things into the circle.
Hmm.
And it's very tough because to me, I feel like there's a fine line, and each time is has to be looked at as new and a possibility of yes or no. We either let it in or we don't. And there's a nuance to it. And you want to grow, but you also want to keep it
Hmm.
genuine and pure to the point where you don't want you don't want to just let anything happen, because then there's a level of like, well, then what are we really doing? So I understand that, and I understand the need for that, but I've just always been of the mindset of, if you don't take chances, you'll never be able to open the door or push the boundaries. But it's calculated. Everything is calculated. It's not just like whatever. And the gatekeeping of that is a necessity. And sometimes it's looked down upon, sometimes it's looked up, like, oh, he held it, he didn't let that in, or he lets anything in. It's
Right.
like, there's a level of nuance to that where it's like, well, it's a gate.
Yeah.
It's got to Something's got to come in and out,
Yeah.
or else it's a wall.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like,
Yes.
utilize the gate part of the gatekeeping,
and
but
and, and
like keep it,
understand
like
what the gate is
be
for.
mindful.
Like in Islam, they say in like spirituality, they say that the sacred law or like the Sharia, like the praying 5 times a day, we eat this, we don't eat that. This is this is like our code of ethics. Like they say that that's a fence that's guarding a garden. Like the garden is the human being, that the heart you want to have, the soul you want to have, the type of
Right.
that's what it's really about. But if you have a fence with no garden, then you just basically get what everybody hates about religion. And that's very common. But also on the other side, if you have a garden with no fence, like gardens need to be protected. Like the heart needs to be protected,
Right, right,
the art needs to be
right,
protected. And man, to me, the big thing that I notice is that like great DJs were and are, like you said, it's a living sensitivity, a living sensibility. That this music is being framed through you or Jazzy Jeff or whoever. Um, and that's also what great record labels were. That's also what great, you know what I'm saying? If you see like, no, Russell put the stamp of Def Jam on this, or Rick or whoever did it, that means that they don't, I might have never heard this before, but you would buy that record just based on the fact that somebody at Def Jam said this is part of what we rock with. And so now that you have AI
right.
doing that, like now that you've got algorithms doing that, it's like, man, I almost those things are almost never they never speak to me. Like, when you watch a YouTube video about music and it's like, if you like this, you'd also like this. It's almost never true.
Because that yo, algorithm is the worst fucking gatekeeper in the world. It's the worst gatekeeper. And it's the best for some, but it's the worst in my opinion. For what I do,
Yeah.
they can never get it right. Anything that's ever suggest I mean, look at all my record, my collection, what's going on in here. Like, I like a certain thing for a certain because of the drummer, because the sampler, because so and so produced it, or the year, or the algorithm. As much as they want to know that, they don't have that, and they'll never have that. So, the man versus the machine. Like, for me, in regard to selection,
Mhm.
I'm always going to win over that because I'm tied in. I'm tapped into all these records. There's fingerprints all over
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Not numbers. Not oh well. This charted at this thing, so he'll like this
yeah,
because this numbers because these people have ran these numbers up, so it equates to that, and those two speak to each other because of the same year or label. It's like the algorithm. I mean, maybe one day they'll get it right, but for me, the thing that I love so much about and it goes back to what you're saying about certain DJs. The thing I loved and still love is that when you would go see one DJ, they would sound different from the next DJ.
yes,
And each person would have their own style and flavor, just like rappers, just like beat makers, just like anybody.
yeah,
This wouldn't sound like that. And I loved that. That was the thing that drew me to, oh, we got to go see so and so because he makes the best this, and you'll only get it this way through
that's right.
his thing.
Yeah,
And back when we would buy these records or make these records and white label them so nobody else could steal our secret sauce,
mhm,
that mattered because you had a thing that's like you want people to keep coming to get your special sauce. You would do that. That's his thing. So that over the years became less and less because people wanted to not stand out. They wanted to fit in. And that was a big thing for me through the Vegas years. Like when I had my residency in Vegas, and there was a moment where it was like, superstar DJ stuff. I'm winning America's Best DJ Awards, and there's all this fanfare of like, go and do the super mega clubs. And those were great. But I would roll in there and I would try and infuse my thing into it.
man,
And I realized in that environment, that's exactly what they don't want. They
right,
want they want the same thing because they want an aesthetic and a comfort zone in order to party.
yes,
Look, this is, and I get it. Like, yo, this is your one. You saved up for 4 months to come out and party or do your thing, and you're going to Vegas to just wild out.
right.
The last thing you want is some dude sprinkling, hip hop and Tool, and like you don't want that.
It's too
You
much
want
it's
that
too
somewhere
much
else. You
to
don't want
think
that in
about, and
Vegas.
it's too you have to be too present, and if one of the things I've noticed about your particular style is, and great artists do this across the board, is like you create tension and then you release it.
Oh yeah.
So,
Oh
like, you
yeah.
create tension, like, I have felt it in my body where there's boom, and I'm like, "Yeah, I feel this. Yeah, word, I'm at a hip hop party." And then all of a sudden there's dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun, dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. I'm just like, "Oh, man, I hate this stuff. What's going on?"
Right. Right.
And then you add an element to it that it's like, "Oh, okay." But there's a trust that has to be built, you know what I'm saying, to be
Oh
able to
yeah.
rock with
Oh
you
yeah.
on that. Stick with me, because I'm gonna expose you to something that you don't like, and you're allowed to not like it, but hold on. You know what I'm saying? Like once I
When
want
it resolves,
yes.
dude, you're gonna see something that you wouldn't have gone down that road. you touch on something that's super important, because I'll tell you, it goes back, and I learned that from the DNA
Mhm.
of hip hop.
Mhm.
All those break beats, all those ultimate breaks and beats. Listen to Apache. Apache is the dopest hip hop record breakbeat ever. It's one of my favorite breakbeats ever.
Yeah.
Breakbeat at the top, breakbeat in the middle, and they're both
Yeah.
incredible. Oh, so dope. The stuff in between, a lot of guitar twang, a lot of like,
Corny. It's horrible.
but the thing that made those things work was that.
Yeah.
And if you went on that journey, that was the, and then the break was the, ah. And if you're just playing break, you can be like, ah, but then you get sort of desensitized to how dope it is, because
Mhm.
you need contrast of the other thing to set up the break. And that was the thing that when I would watch people play, all they would play is the break beat. And it's like, that's the dope part, yes. But if you don't give a little bit of context to
Right.
what makes that thing so magnificent, it's the setup. If you
Yeah.
don't set up, it's like telling jokes, man. If you don't set the joke up right, the
Yeah.
punchline, it's you need that dead space. And that to me was the tension in most things, where I realized, let me throw this out there, and let me also risk the fact of like, everyone may leave right
Yeah,
now,
that's right.
this party may be done,
Yes.
but if I could pull this off, everyone's staying and they're loving it. Not only are they staying and loving it, they can't wait for the next one, so they're going to sit and lock in
Yeah.
wherever I go. And I've, over my 33 years, I've built up this trust with my, with my, anyone who listens to what I do, and that they're like, this guy, let him go, just let him go,
Yeah.
because you're gonna see the light at the end of it. Just trust it. And that's been my whole thing, is how can I continue to really push and take people on other places, because what's the point? Why
Yeah.
keep it in safe every time?
Yeah. And that idea of like of tension. I mean, the great comedians, especially working right now, it seems like the comedians that people are really most drawn to are people start with a premise that is wrong. You know what I mean? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
so much of the art form now. Like let me introduce this idea that none of us are supposed to even say out loud. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah. Oh
Especially if
yeah.
you go see the great ones and the ones that respect each other the most. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna see
Mm-hmm.
Dave Chappelle or Louis C.K. or Bill Burr or on down the line, like all of these great, you're gonna see them challenge the audience in a way. And the audience is almost, for as much as we trust them or as much as we appreciate them, is just like, oh man, I don't think I want to be laughing at this. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no, well, the real, but that's, it's funny, man. Like, um, I did a little bit of recon, and I know that you're tapping into the comedy world a little bit, as well as I am to a degree. But comedians to me share so much with the DJ community. It's the similarities. I study comedians, two reasons. One, it's great to just laugh and see things through a different perspective.
mhm,
And there, when you got someone who's a master at it, is incredible. To go and work with Dave Chappelle and do a juke joint like that, to me was like one of my favorite fondest memories. And working, hanging with Russell Peters. There's all these different people who are, uh, you know, they are in our wheelhouse, and they're people to study and network with and connect with. But going back to me, studying someone like George Carlin, to
mhm.
me, George Carlin, when I started studying his way he put things together, I was like, oh, this, I could I could try and do this with my DJ work. And I started to understand the similarities of comedic timing in general as
Right.
a DJ is
Yes.
again, if you want to set up something, too much
Absolutely.
tension, you'll
Yeah.
lose them. Not
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
enough tension,
Because
it
now it's
won't
just
land right.
painful. Don't make it painful for me.
Right,
Make it a
right.
massage. A
So that whole
massage
thing of
should
just
hurt a little
studying,
bit, and then the release is what's
right,
yeah.
right, right. But like, so understanding the setups, understanding the nuance, understanding the pause, the breathe, the letting the crowd laugh. It's the same thing of like and getting the crowd to go, oh, and then diving back in, like that ebb and flow of like communication. Because I get on the mic, I speak a lot when I play, because it's that there's a reason for that for me, because I never had an MC that was my MC per se that I could run around with, so I became that, right? So but learning how to speak and deal with, any heckler is the equivalent of a request. Hey, play this song or whatever, or someone heckling you. It's like that. Having to understand how to diffuse that. As a DJ, we have to be up on the current music, just like a comedian has to be up on current events.
Mhm.
So it's like you're trying to bob and weave and sprinkle a little bit of current in, but still keep it classic and traditional to what you do. If you have an angle, or there's all these things, man. You're one person up on stage. We're one person up on stage. There's all these things that I started to realize that I could learn from. So for me, man, studying comedians was just like there's so much I picked up on just start big and bigger, have take callbacks, all these things
Right.
that are just things, oh, let me bring this thing back to, oh, that, oh yeah, all the nuance of communicating. You're doing it through material that you've written. I'm doing it through material that I've curated, or acapellas of this and that, and tying things together, all that stuff. Whether you want to say something super emotional, you want to get people to really flush out, or it's a real rough time. There's another thing too that I always love too is you go and you play a city.
Mhm.
Say I go and play Dallas,
Mhm.
and I unload all my good bits, and then I got to go, and then I got to come back and play Dallas again in 6 months. Well, I can't use any of my bits again
Right.
because I got to come up with new material. It's the same thing with a comedian. You can't go and do your same bit. You got to come up with new material. So there's this constant thing of like just studying and learning and seeing how people incubate and then how they come back out and how they tie things. It's like, certain classics, like you go see Andrew Dice Clay, you're going to get the Mother Goose stuff because that's the greatest hits, right? It's the same thing with me. You come and see me, you want to see me do my, one routine. That's if you drove all the way and you didn't see the routine, you'd be like, man, I wanted to see the routine. So it's like you have these bits that you have to continue to expand upon. A lot of similarities, and I study that all day long. It's wild to me.
I mentioned at the top of the podcast that Syria and Turkey have been devastated by this series of historically catastrophic earthquakes. And if you listen to the podcast, you know that my family and I have been living in Istanbul for the past couple years. My inboxes and my texts and my apps that I use to communicate with people and my DMs and my email, everything has just been full of messages of people reaching out, making sure we're okay, asking if we need anything. And alhamdulillah, I mean, physically and directly, the earthquakes didn't touch Istanbul. Some people said they felt tremors and things. We personally didn't feel them. But just living in this country, I mean, first of all, there's already a big economic crisis that this country has been undergoing for the past several years. On top of that, the weather is extremely cold for this region of the world, and they're just not set up for it. So, really low temperatures that honestly, coming from Minnesota, like temperature wise, like, man, why does this feel so harsh? Like I said, this part of the world just isn't set up for it. So, a lot of rain. The buildings aren't set up for this type of cold. They're just not insulated like that. So, even nice places have water coming in and they're really drafty. People have lost power. There's electrical storms. There's incredible winds. This country has been already dealing with a lot, not to mention what Syria is going through. And so the earthquakes, it rivals September 11th. And the feeling of being in a country that has gone through something like this in some ways reminds me of September 11th. It's a historical level event. And I remember when the earthquakes happened in Haiti and there were hurricanes and things like that, and being in America and just being like, man, I see the footage and I want to help. And what do we do? And I just remember feeling like, man, I really hope that we can trust these organizations. I know our intentions are good, but in this particular case, it means a lot to us that we've been connected with Zakat Foundation from the beginning of this podcast because Zakat Foundation works on the ground. They don't just drop money places, they don't just drop ship food. They have a really serious headquarters in Turkey, and the president of the organization is from Turkey. So if you go to zakat.org, zakat.org, this is an organization that's deeply connected. This is an organization that you can trust. This is an organization that's really adept at getting goods and services and resources exactly where they're needed and to the people who need them the most quickly. If you feel moved to help, a little bit goes a long way. You know, the $20 that we can give, the $100, the $200, the $5, it goes a long way, especially if a lot of people do it. So I'm personally asking, out of all the talking I've been doing for the last coming up on a year about Zakat Foundation, I'm personally asking, go to zakat.org right now and give something to the people in Turkey and Syria that are going through this. And while you're there, stick around with Zakat Foundation because it's a reputable organization that does great work all over the world. The balance that a person has to be truly great at any of these art forms is such a it's a miracle, because in order for you to be you, or for you know, a great comedian, or for like a great artist in general, you have to be equally tied in and connected and loyal to, like, you have to really know yourself.
Hmm.
So like you're saying, there's certain records that you will play and there's certain records that you're not going to play, and there are certain like cheap tricks and low hanging fruit that, you know, most of this audience will go crazy if I do it. You do not do those things.
Right.
Like, I've seen you 100 times. You never do that. You never do those things. For most people to be that self-aware artistically is really rare. But then you also have to be really sensitive to the audience and the experience that they're having. At the same time, Brendan BK1, he actually he didn't tell me this until years later, but he had studied a lot about magic. And so when he and I built like my live kind of stage thing together, and his whole thing was like studying magic and studying what you show people when, and like how do you build and craft the experience that they're having. You know what I mean? Like, you got to show them
I love that.
something a little bit, just so that they know, like, oh, I'm with somebody who knows what they're doing. That's got to be pretty quick.
Yeah.
But that can't be your
Yeah. Yeah. Oh
biggest
yeah.
thing. You gotta, like, you start with
No.
just like,
No.
you're with a real one here, so you should watch this. And then you give them something, you give them
Yeah.
a couple like that, and then you give them something a little bit out of the ordinary, and they're like, wait a minute, like, what, you know what I mean? But you have to
Yep.
to do this time release thing and this like really delicate balance that most people are going to be good at one or the other of those. Like, it's very rare that somebody is able to really be true to themselves and also communicate that to other people on a mass scale.
It's a lot. It's a lot of work to be that versatile, because it's something that you're very conscious that you're doing. You know what I mean? You're very aware of the fact that, okay, if I'm gonna play all these different parties and I'm gonna try and fit into these different worlds, I have to study the music
Mhm,
and the culture and know about it and be of it.
mhm.
Don't just show up and play the party, but go to those parties, network with those people,
Right.
become a fixture in that crowd, even if you're on the peripheral. At least you're there and you're absorbing, as opposed to, what are the top 20 of that style of music? Okay, give me those. I'll go play that party. It's like, no, you've missed it. While you could still get over, the real ones are going to look at you and go, yeah, I ain't whatever. But if you want to expand and really tap into these worlds, then go really live there. Like, I love drum and bass. Have always tried to sprinkle that into my mix in some capacity.
Mhm.
And so I've studied this music, and when I go and play a drum and bass party, I'm I'm in drum and bass mode, and now I'm bringing hip hop mode as a secondary, right? So I go in and I'm playing this music, but hip hop is right behind it. I'm scratching over these drum and bass records, whatever. It's the same thing that, oh, I'm gonna go play a house set. Well, I'm in house mode, but hip hop's right over here, so you're gonna get some hip hop sprinkled in. The same way that when I'm in hip hop mode, you're gonna get a little bit of house sprinkled in, and a little drum and bass sprinkled in. These are all the spices I have on my rack.
Mhm.
I'm going to use everything at my ability when I'm cooking on the fly. You know, this is the thing that I always struggle with, especially in the mashup thing. Like, a lot of people consider me to be that, the godfather of that scene, or one of the pioneers of that scene,
Mhm.
which I definitely helped popularize it, but
Definitely.
it was going on long before
That's
me.
true.
You
Yep.
know what I mean? There's many people before me, but the thing that I realized in that whole thing was, once it became popular and people realized, oh, I could mix this with this, and people, they people started to see that how the juxtapositions would work. they didn't understand the level of, you have to know this music in order to present it.
Yes.
If you don't know the other ingredient
Yeah.
and you're just taking it off of the shelf, like when this started happening, everyone started mixing Back in Black AC/DC with whatever, because that was like the lowest hanging, easiest. Oh, it's AC/DC and it's this. Sure, sure, of course. But if you're a real one, you'll go and you'll mix like High Voltage or Let's Get It Up or some of these, Live Wire, some of these songs that are, if you're an AC/DC fan, you know these songs.
Yeah.
But if you're not, then you don't. But take the thing nobody knows, then put the thing everyone knows over top of it. I'm gonna take this Outcast acapella and put it over that. And to me, that's where the juxtaposition worked. But when I started hearing all these really lazy
Yeah.
people taking the most familiar thing they knew with the other familiar thing they knew, put it together, and then put it out there, I was like, this is like, it'd be the equivalent of watching a hack comic go up there and just be like,
Yeah.
you know what I hate about postal workers? It's like
Yeah.
whatever. You're like, oh shit, you know what I mean? So that always bugged me because people weren't, the craft is set up to be really high bar.
Yes.
But if you're keeping it low bar, then you're doing a disservice to that being the thing that push it forward. And I don't know, man. I've always struggled with that, because it's like it's like walking into any club or any party. Even now, mashup thing aside, but same aesthetic. You walk in, and I went out the other day to some random bar that happened to be a part of this party, and I went to this club, and there's a DJ playing, and I just listened to him play, and they're just running through all the sort of hits and all the sort of party classics, and there's just no vibe,
Mhm.
no energy, and it was hard. And it's a little tough for me because clearly this is my world.
Right.
But like when you hear somebody just painting by numbers who could give a fuck less about, so it goes back to something you said about how do you keep the balance of like
Yeah.
engaging with them. But my whole thing is, and the numbers change, but it's the same mix, is one for you, two for me.
Ah.
One for you, three for me. Oh, two for you, one for me.
Uh-huh.
Three for you, one for me. Oh, eight for me. Eight for me right now, one for you. Depends, but it's like a little for you to get you, to keep you, and then here's a whole bunch for me to educate you.
Yeah.
And as soon as you start being like, oh, hang on, here's your, you reel you back in with another, but one, 2 to 1, 3 to 1, whatever the situation requires, and it changes per track. You drop a track, you got them, everyone's on the dance floor. Here comes some other thing. I'm not gonna hit you with something that's gonna, this guy's like all over the place, but I'm gonna hit you with something that's gonna get you over here. And so I'm constantly rotating and constantly ebbing and flowing through the set, because to me, if I walk into a room and someone's playing with me like cat and mouse style, I'm like, yo, where is this going? I'm no, we can't leave. This guy's,
Right.
I want to know where we're going.
How's this movie end?
Exactly. It's sad because I feel like most people these days, when it comes to DJs and listening to DJs, haven't ever experienced that. So they don't know that it can be this level.
Mhm.
Because if you've only experienced McDonald's hamburgers, and that's all you don't know what the Kobe beef, line out the door, one hamburger joint, that's, you don't know that.
Yeah.
I feel like that's one of those things where it's super important for people to have experienced that at some point, because then you know the difference. But like if you don't know, then you'll never know. So it's a non-issue. You don't even know it exists. But that's my thing, is I struggle with, I feel like the bar has been lowered so low these days
Yeah.
that I don't want to sound like the old guy, but it's like, back in my day, whatever. But I feel like there's a level of like, I just wish that people could see how good it could
Yeah.
be, and everyone aspire to that,
Yeah.
as opposed to, this just gets me my paycheck.
Yeah.
These people are dancing. It doesn't matter. I'm in, I'm out. And it's like, I struggle with that I just struggle
And
with
there's
it.
just there's no replacement for authenticity. One of the things from comedy, I actually heard Jerry Seinfeld say it. He was saying that, like, he'd be in Iowa doing jokes about New York City. And it's like, this is not from these people experience, but they would laugh at it and they would understand it because of the fact that they could tell, like, this is true. I don't even know why it's true. Like, I don't even understand, but you can just feel in this person's bones that this is part of who they are. Like, this is part of their experience.
Hmm.
And like you said, when you travel around the world, you might drop into a scene and be like, I don't know what is happening here, but it's very alive and authentic. This is real. Like, I don't even know if it's for me. I don't
Yeah,
even know if I'm safe, but like, this is real. This is different than anything that I've experienced before. And yeah, like you're
that's
saying, it's so
it's
many,
so rare. It's
yeah, people that do the mashup thing, it's like, or and really any hack version of any art form. It's like when you play a record, it's like he loves this record. You know what I mean? Like all of the records feel like there's probably a story of how this record came into your life, why it means what it means to you. And I don't need to know all of those stories to just know that something authentic is happening right now.
yeah, 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 and it's all of that is also coupled with I'm taking a chance and a risk because you may not know this, but I'm hoping that I'm putting you onto it,
Mhm.
or at least between the things you know, putting you onto something that you don't know.
Yeah.
That's the thing when I go and listen to a DJ. If I can hear a song or two that I don't know, that I'm like, wait, what is this? Then I'm intrigued. Then I'm curious because what you're doing is you're infusing you into the mix. And that goes back to what we're saying. Why does Jazzy Jeff sound like Jazzy Jeff? Why do I sound like me? Why does DJ Scratch sound like Scratch? It's all these different people are doing different takes or different versions, and that's what makes them them. And I feel like that's the key to having um, a sense of longevity and also building a crowd. Although it's the way slower path, it's the slowest path. I mean, we when we set out on our careers, we're so about this thing where it's like not everyone's going to get what we do. The ones that do
Yeah.
are lifers. They're here forever. Thank God. You know what I mean? Like thank the fact that all these people have supported us and rock with us
Mhm.
because that's the whole thing is I'm going down this path and I only want genuine. I don't want, the people who come and go, that's cool too, but like the people who rock with me are my fuel to keep me
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries. And that's something that, I don't know, man. I wish there were more people like that, but it's not the path. You look at any DJ situation now, which is really wild because it's really DJing has defaulted to just EDM world in a major way. That's where all the money is. That's where all the bells and whistles and
Yeah.
pyrotechnics and production. And I get it, but there's something about that too that it's like, while it's beautiful and amazing and it's a great release, it's like the equivalent of the disco era where people just wanted to cut loose and it was just
Yeah.
the more extravagant, the
Yeah.
more blown out, the better,
Yeah.
which is fine. There's something to be said about like going to the festival and seeing everything, and that's fantastic. And there'll always be that. I'm a fan of that.
Yeah.
But going to this big hall, low ceiling, two lights,
Mhm.
pump and sound system. Nobody's looking at they're all dancing in their zone or with each other. And there's a whole other vibe of like, nobody cares about like those two lights could be off. It doesn't even matter.
Right.
This place could be pitch dark. People are just so in tune with the sound and so in tune with the vibe. That to me is a religious experience. And
Yes.
I just wish that it was a little more balanced because to me, when you tap into that, that's going to change your life. You know what I mean? That to me, the places where I've been, like you said, that have been unsafe or have been, uh, uh, you don't know what was happening. To me, were the most religious experiences. And I will say this even further: is if I take a step back
Mhm.
and it goes down to the blueprint of underground parties, especially for me in Arizona, there was only a group of outcasts. There was only this many people
Mhm.
that were into house, hip hop, techno, whatever. It didn't matter. If you were just a kid at this age, you were into anything that wasn't the mainstream. We would go to a party, there'd be one set of turntables set up, and you didn't know who was playing, you didn't know what was playing, you just knew that was the place to be. And we would cycle through DJs on one set, and it would be, somebody playing minimal techno. Then the next person is playing happy hardcore. The next person is playing, industrial. Then the next person is playing hip hop. Then that person is playing drum and bass. All in the same night,
Yeah.
all on the same set of turntables, all in a darkly lit thing, and you were just grooving to whatever was happening.
Yeah.
And it was a vibe and an energy. That to me is the thing that I miss, because it created community, it created integration.
Yeah.
And I know I don't know how much time we got, but I want to finish this thought. It's a
No,
little.
take your time, brother.
I just want to
Please.
get there because this kind of matters, and this is something that happened recently to me that changed things. But that's how, to me, community started in a place that didn't have a lot of community. Is I became friends with the EDM kids or the techno kids or the, whatever, the goth kids, because we were all in this place, all trying to escape whatever was going on outside and have a sense of community. Gay, straight, black, white, didn't matter. You know what I mean? You could look and be who. I didn't give a shit who you were in that world. I just was like, oh, that's Bob, or that's whatever, Steve, whatever. Didn't matter. You were just this person.
And he's got crazy records.
He's crazy records, or he's just got crazy vibe, or he's an interesting dude. I could sit and talk to this dude for hours while the music that's not my favorite is on. I could strike up a conversation, whatever. But there was this community of like interesting freaks. You know what I mean? And we were all in that. That to me was the blueprint for rave culture. And when rave culture was that, it was so universal and everyone was integrating. The minute they started separating rooms, the drum and bass room,
the raga room,
the techno room, the house room, that to me, while I understood it, because if you want that main vein of like, I just want to go and just hear house music and all that other stuff, it's like, I get that. But the problem is it started to segregate the party goer into silos. And that became the rave thing. And even the Coachellas and everything, it becomes the thing where each stage, someone will only go to that one stage and sit there and never get exposed to something else. And that was the struggle for me where, I remember first couple Coachellas I ever did, walking by a stage and going, hey, what is that? And you sort of get roped in. But when it was one stage only, you were forced to observe and just be at the party. And the funny thing is, when the pandemic hit, we all started going into streaming. And the thing that it was a obviously very dark time, but the thing that I loved about it is I got hit up by Insomniac, Pasquale, who's the main dude at Insomniac. Those are the guys who throw Electric Daisy Carnival, Nocturnal Wonderland, EDC, all the big raves. He's been doing it for years. We've been friends forever. He hit me up one day and he's like, hey man, we're doing the streaming thing and we want you to come and do a set. I was like, yeah, man, I'm totally down. Like, how are we doing this? He's like, well, we've converted our lobby into a little sound thing where we'll have somebody come in, play, and then they leave out the next door. Then we disinfected the DJ gear, and then the next person comes in and we stream it all to everybody. And that's how we're keeping it safe. And I was like, well, cool, I'm into it. But the problem is most of the DJs are on CDJs. And if you're not familiar with that is, that's a newer technology that allows you to plug in a USB with your songs on it and just sort of manipulate it. I'm still on turntables. And while I still am using the same thing of playing digital files, the mechanism I'm using is still turntable related. So I was like, I'm totally down to do it, but I got to bring my turntables. And so they're like, yeah, not a problem. And about 2 days before, I'm like talking to the tech guy. I'm like, how are we going to do this? Because we got to roll my turntables in and then roll them out. He's like, I don't really have any hands. So the only way we could do this is if you start the stream. You're basically opening. A day before, one of the techs calls me. He's like, hey man, we're super excited to have you, do this. And we're super stoked you're doing an old school set. I'm like, wait, what? Old school set? I'm like, nobody told me about that. So now in my mind, I'm the old guy doing the old school set, opening the show. And I was like, this is double bad. So I was stressing because I was like, man, I don't want to, I just had made some new music. I'm still relevant, doing relevant things. I'm not this old guy. I can do a throwback thing, but I'm still, it was like this ego smash where I was like, oh man, this just, with the peripherals on this do not look good. So I didn't want to be that, but I was like, doesn't matter. It's pandemic. Like, let's just go ahead and do it. I rolled in and what I ended up doing is I found a song in digging through it that had a line in it that said, old school with a new school flavor. And I was like, oh, that's perfect, because that's what I'm trying to do here. Is like, let me give you a little bit of throwback, but all with this new stuff on top of it. So that was my mantra going into it. And a little side caveat to that, I don't ever like to use the term old school anymore. And this is something that LL had sort of hit me to when we were talking before we had launched Rock the Bells Radio on Sirius XM. He was like, you know what? I don't like the term old school because it implies old, outdated.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, what I like is the word classic.
Mm-hmm.
Classic implies that it's forever.
Timeless.
Like Coca-Cola, classic,
Right.
timeless. You know, salt and pepper. So spices are classic. They're not old school spices.
Right,
They've been
right,
around
right,
forever.
right, right.
The classics. So anyway, so I was like, I got to get this old school thing out and classic, whatever. So I went into this mantra, but I started the set. I did my thing, and I finished my set, and I looked down at my phone, and I had 300 messages, and I was like, wait, what? And I realized that the stream had gone out to like 250,000 people, or whatever it was. And it's huge. The thing is, because these are all people who would go to an EDC and go to their 8 stages and go camp out at the base stage or camp out at the whatever. These are all people who were only seeing one screen. So all the people were forced to look at one screen, which was one setup, which was harkened back to the days of the one set of turntables, one room, everybody. And people were seeing me do my thing and were blown away. And the fact that I was on turntables, they were like, the comments were like, is this the new CDJs? What is he on? Like, people didn't know
They didn't know
what the turntables were. It was new to them. And so the thing I was super afraid about was being the old guy doing the old thing, ended up being flipped. Because I was the first person on,
mm-hmm.
everybody was ready to watch the movie. They were all watching, ready to see the opening.
Yeah.
It wasn't like, so the opener, it didn't matter where you were in the line. It was better for me to open the show and be this person with this thing, because all in the comments were like, oh, I feel bad for anybody else to follow this guy. Oh my God, I feel like, and my favorite thing, because we always are like, we want people to see the skills of us doing it, because some people make the thing,
they just
hit
push
play and kind of cheerlead a little bit.
Yeah.
Which is, if that's what works for you, fine. But for me, I like to show the work, and I like people to see that there's talent and things happening in real time. My favorite comment was, oh, he's DJing.
Right.
And also, my set was built to be interesting to listen to, as opposed to a set that you would want at a festival where you're jumping up and down.
Lights
if you're on
and
your couch
and drops.
Yeah, if you're on your couch and you're watching, you're not standing up, jumping on your couch at home. You're watching, so people could pay attention and understand the nuance a little bit more. So this whole concept that I had of like old guy, all that was washed away by saying I'll do it, as opposed to like fighting, going, no, I want to be in this time slot with it. Just do it. The universe was like, here you go. Here's all these new people that are interested in what you do. It's a breath of fresh air. And then I started streaming pretty heavy through the pandemic based off of that. And I got all these new fans and new people. Plus, I also got to do the style of DJing I wanted to do, because it allowed me to then start going down and do, like, I'm going to do a house set. I'm going to do a chill set. I'm going to take one of my old mixes and reconstruct it. I'm going to sit down and then I would do a thing where at the end of my sets, I would just talk on the mic for like 2 hours and answer people's things on Twitch. And it became this great community, all based off of this thing that, based off of streaming, based off of the one camera shot. And it was it's just interesting to me, because I was struggling prior to the pandemic. I was struggling on like, man, I feel like I'm losing the thing that drew me to it in the first place, which I also want to have other people draw to it. That's missed. The simplicity of one thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know, man. It was it's a long story to get to that, but I was so blown away by the fact that, like, my old school way of thinking, I'm gonna say it, my old school way of thinking was what was hindering me. And if I let it go, and I ended up getting this whole new thing, you know what I mean? So like flipping it and taking the old out and going with just exist, people are going to ebb and flow. And it's funny now because from that, my whole, everything has changed, man.
Mm.
Post pandemic, my brain is like, I'm not so engaged and worried about the numbers or the who's seeing what or whatever. I'm just worried about doing good work.
Mhm.
I'm worried about staying true to what I want. I don't even really engage. And I find myself going through these ebb and flow moments where I'll engage and I'll be online for 6 months, putting stuff out, whatever, and then I'll recluse. And you won't hear from me really for a minute because like I need to recontextualize or work on some other things.
Mhm.
And I just realized that the whole concept of I was running this rat race trying to compete with all these other things or feel like I needed to be at this level. Man, none of that matters. Just none of it matters. Am I happy? Are the people that are listening and absorbing what I'm playing? Are they happy? Is it 1,000 people? Is it 100 people? It doesn't matter. Sometimes it's a million people. Sometimes it's four. It doesn't matter. Just do the work. And it became about the process. It became about lowering my expectations
Mhm.
and just engaging with what matters to me. And also at this point too, there was a part during the pandemic where I never looked back. I always was going, 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 going. And I never looked back at my accomplishments. I never looked back at anything. And finally, I had a moment to stop and look back and see the warpath I left behind. And
Mm.
there's this hustler mentality of 16-year-old Z Trip trying to like be known that I carried with me all the way up until a couple years ago,
Yeah.
where no, they got to know who I am. Like, I got to hustle. I got to get the gig. I can't say no. I got to hustle, hustle. And I stopped and I was like, wait a second, dude, you've done all these things. You've reached a level of people know who you are, and if they don't, that's cool too.
Mhm.
But like, what are you doing from here on out? It's about legacy now. It's about building upon what you've like. Take the take the backpack off. Sit down, chill, figure out what you want to do, how you want to evolve. What do you want to say on the last part of your journey? 33 years, man. It was like I would just go, go, go. And all the pandemic was a big enlightening thing for me, man. And I've gotten to this point now where I don't know, man. I'm in a much better place, and I'm starting to work on music again. Like I'm in producer mode again. I'm into trying to figure out like I reconnected with the why I got into this,
Yeah.
and I started saying no to a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like, hey, man, I don't want to do that. That's a headache. That's yeah, the money's great on that, but if I don't love it,
Right.
if I then
It's a
how about I don't
distraction.
mess with it?
Yeah, like what amount of money would make me stop doing the thing that my heart is genuinely calling me to do the thing that somebody else is paying me that I don't care about? Like what's a dollar figure that makes that worth it?
Right.
Yeah, man. It's incredible like seeing these crafts in a more intimate way. Like when you were talking, I was just thinking about Grandmaster Flash and Wild Style in his kitchen.
Hmm.
And he's got like, you know what I'm saying? He's got the two turntables set up in the kitchen, and it looks like it's like a project kitchen, maybe. And he doesn't have on the outfit. Like there's no like rings and jewelry and all that stuff. He's just got on. Looks like that's what he had on that day. And he had the turntables in the kitchen, and he just went in there and did his routine. But there's something like intangible, but also really very like visceral and physical. It was embodied. Like the way that he moves and the just the look on his face when he's cutting the record, his posture, his body, you know what I mean? Like being able to see those little nuanced details is really major. And yeah, that's the thing. Like when you start doing bigger events, it's like, yeah, my connection is broadening, but is it deep though? You know what I mean? Like if I start thinking about, well, like how do I spread as far and wide as I can go, as opposed to how can I really deepen the bond between me and the people who are here right now? Like I think I had a very similar kind of takeaway.
Hmm. To me, that's the thing that you have to go as far out as you can
Mhm.
to be able to walk back a little bit to find your happy medium.
Mm.
And I feel like I've done some really extravagant big things like over the years, like huge, huge,
What are
like
some of the big ones? Like
huge.
I'm saying, I always know that you might be doing something huge that I have no idea. And I just want to say while we're talking that people send me videos on Instagram all the time of you in some environment that I'm just like, where is Zach? And like, where's he? Where is he right now? And you're either wearing my shirt or playing one of my records, or Merce, or Prince Whipper Whip, or like,
Yeah, man. I well, look, dude. I Okay, a couple things. I always ride for you because you're not only are you a great person, you're an incredible MC, and I like what you stand for. I like, I love what you stand for. I love the rhymes you have written, the things you have said, our conversations. Um, you to me are underdog because it's just a shame more people don't know you. In my mind, you should be stadiums everywhere. You know what I mean? You should be Jay-Z level in my mind. You know what I mean? So like I'm always riding for you because you're just a good you're you. You're you and I love you and I want if one little thing can help spread or open the door for people to tap into who you are or anything you've done, I'm all for it.
And it's a beautiful thing, and thank you for saying that, and it's real and it's genuine because you didn't send me those videos. Look, man, I'm playing your music at Madison Square Garden right now. Like I'll wake up, like you said, to get to 30 messages of people in this enormous space, and they're like, "Yo, Z Trip's wearing a Brother Ali hoodie," or like I said, it's not just me, but there's a bunch of artists that you always ride for.
And they're all worn out. Like I've beat the shit out of your hoodies and shirts, my friend. Like
Oh
I
man,
need to re up. I'm just saying,
yeah, no, we
it's
get
time.
box on the way.
Um, that's a whole other conversation. But no, but like I ride for you, and also I ride for like a lot of cats that I feel, Murs, Supernatural,
Yeah.
Slug, all you guys to me, and there's a million of them. You know what I mean? Producers, RJ, D2,
Yes,
LP,
yeah,
all these guys like
yeah,
who were, they're all people that if I can, any way that I can pump up, Living Legends or it's any Grouch, whoever, any of you guys, I appreciate you and I love you all because you all to me are some of the realest people. When I see you perform, it's like, oh, this is, you embody the same path. And some people have blown up, you know what I mean? It's like it was great to see LP crack
yeah,
off,
man.
with Run the
Just being the
Jewels, you know what I
same
mean? Like,
LP he's always been. Like he just was
right, right,
the newest version of what he's
right,
always done. Man, that
right,
warmed my
right.
heart so much, man. That like it can happen.
Same, same,
Yeah.
same.
And Mike too. But what are the big joints that you've done that you'd be like, yo, like I can't believe I'm doing this right now?
Well, yeah, okay. So opening for the Rolling Stones, 450,000 people. That was huge. That was back in the day. That was me on vinyl, full out, outside on turntables
Crazy.
in front of people, and
Sun
like
or
and
lights?
winning that crowd over. Sun, Sun. It was so I opened for it was the Rolling Stones, it was Rush, it was AC/DC, and a couple other people. Justin Timberlake had played too. I think that was right when he had just broke away from the whatever In Sync or whatever, and he came out and people were throwing stuff at him on stage, bagels and things. It's like I felt so bad for the dude because he was on the piano and he's really giving it, but they just because he was boy band, they didn't want to have anything to do with him. So when I rolled out there, I was like, okay, this is a rock crowd. I got to dip into my rock bag. So I pulled out my Janis Joplin. I mixed it with some DJ Shadow stuff. And all of a sudden, in 3 songs, I'm playing Steve Miller Band. They're like, yo, he's one of us. And then the whole set became dope because I figured out how to connect with them. But that was a huge one for me. Playing Coachella four times, you know what I mean? Bringing Beck out as an unannounced guest was huge. Um, Obviously all the LL stuff has been amazing. Not only working with him on stuff for the last whatever 12 years it's been, but doing these really big highlight things where, like, I put together with a couple other artists the Kennedy Center honors when we honored LL. I put together the whole thing with Busta Rhymes and Black Thought, MC Light, and DMC, and orchestrating and putting this whole thing together where I'm in the back, sort of maestroing this whole thing as a presentation that's being aired, that's being, those kinds of
Hmm.
things have leveled up my DJing. I'm not just DJing, but I'm actually musical directing, and
Right.
that's a whole thing that LL has opened the doors for me and allowed me to dive into this other world that is, I feel, very next level and sort of the next steps of what I do, just in a greater scale. Same thing with like doing Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Same thing, helping to curate that, and now everyone's in ears, and I'm orchestrating the set and putting it together and counting, putting clicks and things for the drummer to all these things to get everybody to be a well-oiled machine, so he can just be the best LL out in front of the stage. And then when we bring in Eminem for a guest spot, or we bring in J Lo for a guest spot, helping curate all this stuff, winning America's Best DJ award, being an avatar in the DJ Hero game, and helping them create that video game. All these huge milestones. I just My hustler mentality is always like, what's the next gig? What's the next project? What are we doing? And I never really turned back and looked back and was like, wait a second, you've done all these crazy things, man. Chill out.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to hustle as hard. I mean, it's still hustle, but you don't need to be so concerned about what's the next thing.
Right.
I got to keep my followers. I got to keep the light on me.
Mm-hmm.
That to me was to a level, when I had a manager and I had a team and had everything going, that was a big thing of like, let's keep moving it. And while I understand it, and at the time I did it, I never connected with it as much as I do now, where I understand why, and I'm grateful that we did all this to get over a certain threshold. But now that I'm here, I think what matters to me most is just doing things that are true to it's like having the ability to, all that work can never be taken away from me. So all the groundwork and framework has been built where I'm still doing these wonderful major things, still doing stuff with LL in a major way. I'm doing some music supervision for a documentary right now. I'm doing some other things, or I'm producing a little bit more stuff that you may not see immediately at a party or at a festival, but are bigger or growing or allowing me to stay home and work in the studio more as opposed to traveling every weekend. And that, stepping into these new roles, music directing, putting stage shows together
Mm-hmm.
for a 7-minute huge blowout performance in between all these other performances on an award show or things like these are things that are to me are some of the bigger things I'm doing now, and I'm finding myself just stepping, always out of curiosity, trying to push these boundaries and break into like, okay, well, what hasn't been done in that space? What hasn't been, how can I still, one for them, two for me, one
Right,
for
right,
them. And
right.
I think, it's that mentality of anything I'm doing, trying to push the boundaries and get to a little uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
only to have these great resolve moments where, you know, you walk away going, wow, man, that's different. And I'm stunned, and a lot of work went into that. And it's constantly pushing my boundaries, but with all the accolades, year plus residency in Vegas and all these wonderful things that are like, they look great on paper, and they've established me, my resume is tight and strong. I'm still at this point, I think, hungry and curious about what's next.
Yeah.
And because I've had all these things happen in my past,
Mm-hmm.
it's allowed me to not stress as much now. Now my shoulders have dropped a little bit more, and now I'm just like, when I walk into a room and people do know who I am, or do know my legacy, or do know whatever, I'm honored, and I'm grateful. But also, if I walk into a room and nobody knows me, that's even better, because there's this level of like, I still got to prove myself.
Yeah. But then like I get to start over. I get to be new with these people. I get to be
Yeah,
a new
yeah,
artist with in
yeah.
this room.
And that to me, that's fun. Like, there's the young b-boy comes out in me, but it's a bit more tempered, and it's a bit more like reserved.
Yeah.
But it's the excitement of, oh, okay, I got to prove myself again. Well, okay, but I also don't. But I'm gonna. I don't have to, but I'm gonna prove myself again. It's that, you know.
The Travelers Podcast is sponsored this week by BetterHelp online therapy platform. And when you use our link to sign up with them, which is betterhelp.com/travelers, you're going to get a discount on your first month of therapy. We're going to get a commission to help the work that we do here on the podcast. it really is a win-win for everybody. I'm a musician and I cannot stand to watch movies about music being made because it's just like, man, that's not how it works. And I want people to know how it works. My wife is a therapist and she can't stand to watch therapy in TV and movies because she's like, that's not how it happens. On TV and in movies, you see a person lay down on a couch, they cry to a stranger, and that person tells them all the secrets of their life and unlocks everything for them and tells them what to do and maybe gives them pills and things like that. There are a lot of approaches to therapy and there are a lot of ways that it's done. I don't think any of them are that. What therapy does look like in most cases is we start talking to people about the issues that are bringing us to therapy in the moment. So, addictions or relationship issues, or anxiety or depression, or thoughts that we're wrestling with. And firstly, they ask us questions that we couldn't have asked ourselves. And those questions are very revealing. Then they listen and repeat our answers back to us in ways that offer us a lot to learn a lot about ourselves. Now, mind you, they haven't told us anything yet. But as time goes on, they start drawing connections. And they just give us the opportunity to look at ourselves and our lives and the things that we're dealing with and the way that we've processed things, the way that we've stored information in ways that we haven't explored. Like, what's the idea that I have of myself based on this thing that happened? And maybe I didn't even realize that I translated it that way. And then what conclusions have I drawn about the world that may have served me in the moment, but may not be working as I go forward? So, therapy takes a lot of different forms. There are a lot of different approaches, but most great therapists are going to unlock different ways for us to see ourselves that are going to allow us to come to our own conclusions and to set our own goals. And I personally believe that we deserve access to therapy. I had a hard time accessing therapy. I heard about BetterHelp on a podcast and I gave it a shot. I've had 2 different therapists now, and I'm actively involved in weekly therapy sessions on BetterHelp. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers, betterhelp.com/travelers. Like I said, you get that discount. You start talking to them about what type of therapist you'd like to see, and then you make your own schedule with that therapist. You can start communicating with them right away. And at any time, if you feel like maybe this isn't the person for me, you change therapists, no questions asked, no extra charge. I'm recommending it. I have this partnership with them. So go to betterhelp.com/travelers and get down with this therapy journey. Really grateful that you're rocking with the podcast. I hope you're enjoying this episode. Want to make sure that you know about the Caravan, which is our community of subscribers. And it really is a community. What we do there is open up the doors to be able to interact, engage, and communicate on different levels. So we got a $5, like very basic supporter crew, people that are contributing to the show. They're helping keeping things going, helping to keep it independent. Those people get the episodes a day early and they get it without ad breaks. So they're not even hearing this right now. So I'll shout those people out, but they don't even know this is happening. The second level is the one that I want to talk about. People get the episodes early without ads, but they also get a lot of extra digital content that's not available anywhere else. When you subscribe at that level, you automatically get the download for the oral history of rites of passage, which is my demo tape from the year 2000. So that's all the early history of my career. You also get exclusive content that we drop from time to time, and we have a bunch of new things coming. There's a long conversation that we had from our Chris Calico episode where his wife actually joins the conversation. And we had a really beautiful conversation about family and mental health and what it meant both for Chris and I to be completely independent after years of being with these powerhouse independent labels, and had a conversation with Odyssey about coffee. He's a coffee connoisseur like I am. And we talked about coffee from around the world and his different favorite coffee spots throughout America. We got exclusive music coming up. There's a live recording video of me and Evidence performing at First Avenue that we never released. So that's going to be available for our subscribers only. Also, all of our subscribers get early access to the limited drops that we do. Our limited vinyl and merch drops usually sell out really quickly. The learning series that we do usually sell out very quickly. So all levels of subscribers actually get early access to all the things that we drop. And then that third level is like a legitimate community of people who have access to a Slack channel We communicate on a regular basis throughout the week. There are people in that community that would not know each other if it wasn't for this space and this opportunity. It's a really special thing. And when we do new drops, those people usually just get to access those things for free. So head to brotherali.com and look at the section called Join. Check out those levels of the caravan. And thank you for rocking with us. And we hope that you'll dig in even a little deeper. One of the times we kicked it was at one of these like big hip hop tours, and it was De La and Public Enemy, who both are great friends of mine. But then Ice Cube was on it, and LL was there. LL is Slug's favorite rapper, and you worked it out so that Slug could come out during "I Need Love," which is hilarious because LL is the blueprint for this, like, Slug. A big part of his career is not what he's on now, but a big part of his career was talking about relationships and
Of
heartbreaks and all
course.
this kind of stuff. And I've never seen Slug afraid. That man was afraid. Like, he was standing, he was like, "I'm gonna throw up, I'm gonna throw up, I'm gonna throw up, I'm gonna throw up." And then he went out and did his thing with LL. But so okay, so we're sitting there and kicking it with Chuck D and DJ Lord and like their whole crew. And they're so down to earth and available and accessible. Same thing with De La, man. You know what I mean? I have pictures from that night of like Pasta News holding my daughter, and it's just like we're all vibing and hanging out backstage, which is what I'm used to. But LL has always seemed to me like a person who is really guarded, and he's a genuine superstar. He's a global superstar. Um, he also has been famous since he was like 16 years old. He also is one of the greatest to ever do it. And so I never fault him for that. I'm never like, "Oh man, how come LL won't come kick it with me the way that Chuck D does?" But I'm very curious with you working for him, both as a human and also as an artist, do you actually get to see him, figuratively speaking, without the glasses on, without the hat on? Like, do you ever see him when he's just the human?
Well, I think over time our relationship has allowed us to, you know, let me back up because something you said too. I think I want to correct something because
Okay.
working for him, I actually it's more I'm working with him,
Mm,
and that's the thing. I think sometimes the perception that people think, especially now, I see a lot of people go, "Oh, that's LL's DJ," which regulates me to that's I the guy has he's done all these other things, but oh, he's just LL's DJ. Look, LL is LL. He's as big as the sun. I'm over here in my little ecosystem. So there's never going to be a chance for me to ever be as bright as that shining star. And I say that because it goes back to how we connected.
mhm,
I already had a career and highlights and things going on in my career before he and I had met.
mhm,
And when we had met, I didn't need to work with him. I
mhm,
wanted to work with him.
mm, mhm.
And he didn't need to work with me. He wanted to work with me. So that changed the dynamic of he and I and how we approached each other. When we sat down and started doing stuff, it was very much about being open and honest and real with one another.
Mhm.
Because I think you know I didn't I don't feel like I've got anything to lose if I tell him how I feel and be 100%, even if it's something that might upset or frustrate somebody. It's like I think that's the connection that he and I had, is that right out of the gate we're in this because we want to be here. So
Right.
that changes the dynamic of, like,
Yeah.
again, like the working for somebody versus working with somebody. Like, if we're
Yeah.
working together,
Yeah.
then I can be my 100% genuine, honest person to you. And if you don't like it and we go our separate ways, then that's the way it is. And,
Right.
no
Just
harm,
that
no
that's the end of
foul.
a chapter
But,
for both of us.
right. So I think, coming into that relationship, we've always had that. And I think over the years, we've done some amazing work. And it's because we've been very honest with one another
Mm,
and very transparent to each other. And I think, so how I see him and how I connect with him is in a creator world. Like,
mhm,
we create things, and once that happens, I don't even really see LL like that. I see, I see Todd, and it's Zach and Todd having creative conversations about how do we make this better, and it becomes not about us. It becomes about the project and putting the project and the thing. How do we make this be the best possible thing it could be? And
Okay.
that's how I think our relationship has become. It's not, I mean, granted, I'm always aware that I'm in his universe because he's got a million things going on. He's a busy dude, and I also understand too why some people sometimes the perception might be like he's a little hard to reach because there is so much going around his as the sun, he's got all the planets going around, so he's trying to navigate through all the planets to get to him is a little tough.
Yeah.
But I will say this: he's definitely one of the most down to earth, most genuine, most good people, and I consider a very real friend and a very good person. I can bounce ideas off of him, and we've cut through any of the bullshit. Time is so valuable. Like my time with him, just like my time with you, is not going to be spent screwing around. Like let's get to it, man. Let's get busy because there's so many things that we want to accomplish.
Will he be uncomfortable with you? Like if you were to propose to him, like, I'm gonna loop this Johnny Cash thing, and then, like if you were to propose something to him that's really not comfortable, does he have that same kind of trust that your audience has that like, nah, there's a really good chance that this is gonna land somewhere good?
Yeah, I think 100%. When we trust each other
Hmm.
because there's times where I'll suggest something and I feel it deep in my gut,
Hmm.
and he's like, "Cool, man, I'll try it out." He's that's the thing I like about him is he's as avant-garde and as cavalier as I am to
Uh-huh.
push boundaries.
Mm.
I mean, if you think about it, like this is the guy who did the doo-wop,
Yeah.
going back to Cali.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Songs that are what is this sax solo in the middle of a hip hop song? I Need Love. These songs that were at the time were like,
Those were off limits.
this doesn't, yeah, and he pushed those boundaries and broke through. So here's a guy who's already, his track record is already about pushing boundaries and being as creative as he can possibly be. And that speaks to me 100%. And I think that's the thing that we connected on right out of the gate was like, okay, we could do traditional and that could work,
Hmm.
but how can we get a little more interesting and make it more interesting? And I found, the thing I think I will say this about our connection is we are both so overtly concerned with the show and how it comes off and to the level and the degree where he is so hands-on, and that's how I am. We're so about the level of nuance that every little detail matters, and to me that's why I think it works so well,
Hmm.
is that when we come together, we're orchestrating and putting together the best possible piece of work, and we're striking our egos out of it and making it be about the best possible presentation it can be, and that's something that I've worked with a lot of different people, but he is genuinely, um, you know, is genuinely concerned about that as much as I am. And so the thing is too, when we get to a point where we got it, now let's go perform it. My favorite thing is to, he gets to be the front man and do his thing in front, and I get to be the guy back in the pit orchestrating it, the maestro. And that's something where I love that because it's a break from me having to be the front man
Hmm.
and the maestro when I perform, because I got to be on the mic and I'm my own one man show.
Yeah.
So when I get to, just be that and not have to worry about the front man. No, I got the best front man in the business doing all that front work.
That's right.
I can be like really extra deep on the nuance of like making sure this and that speak to each other. And that's the thing. It's like, I trust that he's got the front. He's trusting that I got the back, and we're both pistons are firing 100%. And that to me is when you see that, like we've done some shows that, wow, man, like I couldn't have pulled that off with any other
Hmm.
MC. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Like he's the one who best front man. For like, and working with the GOAT, it's like this is
Like
the
he's the
epitome
one that
of the best
invented the term
MC.
goat. Like that wasn't a word until the same way that
Right, right, right.
Georgia and Meldrew brought the word woke to Erica Badu, and that's where the word woke came from. The term goat came from LL Cool J.
Yeah,
It's
100%,
like talking about like
100%.
Mecca and like the Mecca of this, and then there's Mecca. You'd be like, yeah, the goats are.
Yo, he's the blueprint for so much,
Mhm.
and also the thing that I love about him is that he cares so much about hip hop, and I find again we share a lot of the same similarities. It's like I care so much about this culture
Yeah.
that I want it to be presented correctly. I want it to be preserved
Mhm.
correctly. I want all the nuances of some of the people who might not be the cool Keiths or the large professors who might not be as known as the Jay-Z's or the Nas's or whatever it is. Just I want everything to be included and everything to be cohesive and preserved and presented in a way that is represented correctly
Yeah.
and encompassing and not one side too much West Coast, not enough East, whatever. I just want the whole thing, and he wants that too. And I think one of the things that has really been amazing is when he asked me to be a part of Rock the Bells Radio,
Mhm.
and Rock the Bells, the company. It was very much through the lens of let me remove LL from this and let's put the culture in front of everything. And
Mhm.
so there's a lot of like the stuff I'm doing in behind the scenes is not so much having to put me out in front and have my name be the recognition. It's more about making sure that this stuff is preserved correctly and presented correctly and digested correctly. So when I'm gone, when he's gone, that this stuff still continues to be absorbed in that light because I feel like you know we run the risk of it not being done unless it's curated correctly. You know what I mean? Like you look at some of the other, look at blues or look at some. There's just other things where the narration is a little skewed based upon who you speak
That's right.
to, and so having LL be at the front of that, the pinnacle of that, in pushing, this culture, who better to do that? In my opinion, that's the thing is it's not ego driven. Rocking with him and rocking with the cause is really more the thing that I'm the most connected to, and I love that because when I'm gone, it's like I was able to say I was a part of that,
That's
and
right.
I helped push it along. You know what I mean? And that to me is I take that by the way from a conversation I had with Jazzy J. Um, Years ago, he was in LA and he was at my house and we were talking about it. I was like, man, how do you feel about you're the blueprint. You're on ground zero of this. When you see a 50 Cent or so and so or whoever, this multi-million dollar, billion-dollar industry and everything came from you. How does that make you feel? And he was like, I'm just happy to know that I was there and I had a finger on the pulse then and that I was able to be a part of this. And it's like that to me is the epitome of good hip hop stewardship is to just know that, hey, look, my name may fit wherever it fits in the big thing, but the fact that I was able to help push it along and grow it, he's like, that's the thing that I'm happy. I can go to sleep knowing, whether he's got millions of dollars or just enough to get by. The fact that in his heart he was there at a certain time and knows that, and people do know that, is what makes him feel good. I say this a lot. One of the most important things in hip hop to me is the shout out.
Mhm.
The shout out has more currency than anything because you're keeping that person's name alive. You're keeping the acknowledgement of
That's
who
right.
they are and
That's
what
right.
they've
That's right.
contributed.
Yes.
And I think like that's something to, when somebody inadvertently forgets a shout out or inadvertently snubs somebody, there's a level of because that's the currency. That's the currency. To know that, you were a part of that. Oh, you're connected to that. That matters. So anytime that there's a chance to shout somebody out or give somebody name recognition, to me, that's how you keep pushing it up, and that's how you keep that name going. Think of the early Jamaican
Mhm.
DJs and things like that. So and so will walk into the room. There's so and so, the shout out. There's so and so. It's like you'd walk in, you'd be like, oh yeah, I'm recognized in this community that I'm a part of. And when you don't get that recognition, you feel like further away from it. But when you do, you feel connected to it. And that's something that the shout out to me is probably the most quintessential piece of currency in hip hop that we have that can, and it's free. It's free. You know what I mean? Getting a shout out is like, oh, yes,
Yeah.
I'm still included. I'm still a part of it. It's always important to be mindful of that when you can recognize or give credit or connect dots to let people know who it was who originated something, because that's all we've got is the word. You know what I mean? That's what I took away from the Jazzy J thing. Is the shout out. So shout out Jazzy J.
Man, shout out to Jazzy J. You know what's crazy is one time I was when BK1 retired from the road, he went and launched a radio station and things like that when he started having kids. And so I reached out to Christy Z and Popmaster Fable because I love them and I know that Christy Z has such a big hand in organizing the stuff, DJ culture things in New York, outdoor jams, like really sticking to that tradition. She's somebody I want to have on this show, both of them actually, because she's an amazing person.
Christy's great. Shout out to the Mile High DJ Supply in Colorado. She's in Colorado these days, and they're holding it down. Yeah, like there's so many people that are like these people that are the glue
Hmm.
that you just don't know about or see about, but they're the people that have connected a lot of the dots. And it's interesting because I find myself in a weird way falling into that role a little bit more as opposed to being a front man.
Hmm.
And I like that, man. I'm enjoying the being dope behind the scenes a little bit. Still being able to be dope out in front, but I like being able to help connect dots and go, oh, you know who would be dope on this track is this person, and then you connect the dots and you put it out there, and it's like there it is. You know what I mean? Like there's something to be said about being that. Maybe it's more the producer in me. The older I'm getting, the more I'm into producing
Hmm.
or reproducing or recreating or remixing, but like from a place where I'm not out in front doing it. Like that's a very tactile way of people to see it. But the things that excite me nowadays, it's like, going out and doing a show is fun, but the things that I like, for instance, anytime you're in the vicinity and we're in the same spot, it's like, yo, you want to get on the mic? You want to do like, what are we gonna do? I don't know. And so the thing is, I know that whatever I throw at you, whatever thing I could just be like, catch. You'll be like, you'll catch, and you will break it down, and it'll be the most amazing thing. And there's certain people that I can always do that with.
Right.
You, Sean, Supernatural, Murs, like certain people that no matter what I throw at you,
Yeah.
I know you're going to deliver because you're seasoned and I don't got to worry about it. And it's that to me is the most fun. If that is part of the equation, then I'm all out and ready to be out in front of a crowd and do it because I know we're going to do something. There's going to be a dynamic that is just interesting.
Yeah.
And because we're so vet and so pro that I'm not even worried about it. Like, and I know like if I was like, oh, guess what? So-and-so, whoever's on after us canceled. We got another hour. You ready? You'd be like, let's go.
Yeah. No problem.
It's just like that to me is the stuff that I love and I miss and I'm happy to be a part of that stuff. So I got to tell you, man, like I've been talking a lot here, but there's so much about you that I find intriguing and interesting and I want to pick your brains about because you are also a very interesting anomaly in this whole thing. You know what I mean? Like as much as I'm this weird sort of thing in the whole scheme, so are you. And I love there's a lot of similarities in the fact that like, there's a level of like on the surface, you like, wait, who is this person? Why are they here?
Yeah.
What did they contribute? Who, what? And then
This
once you get
doesn't
to
look like
know,
somebody that's supposed to
like
be
I've
on the
gotten
stage right now. This seems like
at
they're supposed to
all,
unless they're connecting a microphone for who is supposed to be on the stage. Yeah.
yeah, but then yeah, exactly. And then proceed to just fucking tear it down. And to me, that's the thing I've always loved is you're like the ringer, man. Like it's like, oh, you want to see some shit?
Well,
Check
I
this
mean,
guy
I
out.
would anything you're ever talking about, man, I would cancel my birthday and Christmas and everything else to come do. I remember one time I went to South by Southwest which is, as an independent artist, is a really expensive endeavor. And I had a band with me because I had a new album coming out, and I played a bunch of really cool shows. I think I was at it was the last show I ever played at the original Slims in Austin, and it was I opened, like, it was me and Mobb Deep, and so I got to connect with Prodigy, and that was super dope. But you were doing like this enormous Red Bull stage across the street, and so I went over there, and the Roots were just packing up, and they were all there. And at this point, like, I had done the Jimmy Fallon show with them, and I know some of them, and so I'm sitting there talking and stuff, and then you were like, "Yo, um, first song is the Champion remix." Which is like a B-side from 2004. I'm here promoting this new record, and part of me was like, "Man, I wonder if we can do my new single or something," but I'm like, "No, he knows what he's doing." And so we went up there, and I get the mic, I can't see very well, and but I heard you cut in the intro, and so I walk out, blown, blown, blown. I'm a trendsetter. I start spitting it, and I just hear this loud voice go, "Whoa!" And I look over, and I'm like squinting, and it's Jazzy Jeff. It was
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
man. Like, that was like
Because I'm saying, like, that's the lightning in a bottle moment where it's like,
just
watch us flash this whole crowd really fast and just, you know what I mean? Like, that's to me. And I've always been a fan of the more curveball and impromptu,
yeah,
the better. I think we both come from a thing of, there's a stage, there's a crowd, and we're not the show's going till 2 in the morning, and whatever happens between right now and 2 in the morning has got to be amazing.
yeah,
And we got to figure out where to draw it from. And so you just create on the fly, or you freestyle it. And that to me is the part that I spent so much time learning the art of that.
yeah,
It's like just grab for a comedian going up and riffing.
yeah,
Dave Chappelle does it all the time. He'll pop up and he'll just start riffing,
yeah,
and all of a sudden funny shit starts coming out,
yeah,
and you're like, because he spent the 10,000 hours or whatever it is, it's the same thing. So I know that if you're and I am in the same vicinity somewhere, and I'm like, hey, you want to pop on? I know it's going to be amazing, and I know whoever's there, Jazzy Jeff or whoever's, they're going to be like, that was dope, because it's so raw. It's so raw, and I that's something that, look, man, any time we could do that, I think the better. I gotta say, I've got like 4 or 5 beats that I've set aside for you that I was always like, one day I'm gonna, and I've asked you, you've been like, yeah, anytime. It's been on me. I'm just gonna say this. I am the reason this hasn't happened, because every time I've asked you to you want to mess with something, you're like, yeah, just send it. And I just have not gotten around to, because the thing is, I want to send you something, I want you to do it, but then I want us to put it out in a grand fashion. I don't want to just black, you know what I mean? Because it matters to me, the significance. And so I've got all these things that I've set aside for you to be a part of. And I've never had the ability to send them and know that here's where it's going to land, as opposed to you doing the work on it and then getting it back to me and me going, I've got this great thing, and where does it land? So, but I feel like at some point I really got to kick myself in the
we should
ass.
probably do it in the room together. Like, I should probably go there, or
I would love
if
that.
you
Yeah,
ever
I
wanted, if you and your
1000%.
wife ever wanted to come kick it in Istanbul for 2 weeks or something, man, it's an incredible place.
I would. Well, look, I'll take you up on the offer just to kick it with you out there and experience that, because I've only ever been to the airport there on a layover, and the United Lounge blew my head back. As far as, it was an incredible, like, 2-story. It was wild. I felt like I was in a mall just in their lounge. So, but nonetheless, yes, out there vibe, but come back here and record it. But even if we just did 5 things together, I just think they would be so incredible. And man, it's on me. I'm gonna put, all the comments are gonna be like, yeah, Z-Trip, get it together, because I know my fans want to see it. Your fans will probably want to see it too. So I'm gonna take that on the chin, that it is on me to do. But the fact that we haven't collaborated on anything, I want to change that, because your energy, I think when we come together, anytime we've come together on stage, it's been amazing. And I think, who you are and how you write, and who I am and how I put things together, I think we would come up with some really amazing things that would at least sound different and push boundaries a little
Yeah.
bit. And I've got 4 or 5 things that I'm sitting on that they're your
Dope.
beats. I just have never done anything with them, and I will never do anything until it's time to have a project. But they're spoken for. They're
Dope.
yours, and
That's
we got to change that.
that's
It's just got to
amazing.
happen.
That
I got to change that.
Yeah, man. That's super dope. I'm here for that. Yeah. It's funny too because that particular day, I left the stage and I was walking away and I was with Sadiq, President Rhymesayers, and he said, he was like, "Hey, you see who that is in that truck over there?" And I'm like, "No." He's like, "It's Badu." And I walked up to the truck and I said, "May I approach the bench?" And she was like, "Yeah, it was dope." She gave me a really great compliment about that particular moment that we had. I was really, really,
Oh, really?
yeah, yeah.
That's
That's a
great.
great memory, and it was completely off the. But I mean, also you started your set with it, like it was the first song of the set. Really dope.
Oh, yeah, yeah. No, are you kidding me? Let's come out swinging. Yo, and I think that was the night I brought out Nas at the end, and we ran because the set was running late.
Mm.
We only got to do like a song and a half or something, and we had scheduled to do like 4 things, and they cut us off, which was such a drag. But like we got a little bit in that night. But man, I really that was one where I was like, I wish we could have had those 10 more minutes because like we were just getting cooking on that. But yeah.
You know, the first time I toured with Rakim, Kid Capri was DJing for him, and Kid Capri came in, and basically, Rakim had always been known for performing live over the vocals of his records. And for a lot of those
Oh
things, they
yeah.
didn't have instrumentals, they didn't have TV tracks, but also it was always like there are certain great artists that they hadn't it takes them a minute to figure out how to be as great on stage as they are in the studio or in the bedroom.
Right.
And Rakim was one of those people for a long time. And Kid Capri remade a lot of the beats and told Rakim like, "Man, you're gonna rap these songs." And me and BK got to be there for that. He's like, "You're gonna rap, you're gonna perform these songs," and he's like, "Don't worry, I'm gonna hold you down. Like, I'll get your overdubs and things, so you don't have to worry about breath or whatever." But like that was 2007. We saw Rakim basically because of having the right DJ elevate his game. This is 25 years in for him. You know what I'm saying, or 20 years in or something, and he elevated to the point now where when you see Rakim, there's no vocals. Like he's performing the entire thing. And if he wants
Yeah.
to get
Yeah.
quiet, he just gets quiet. If he wants to just chill and do a pose or put his hand in his pocket, the crowd will go nuts and he knows that. But man, so when I heard the story about the first time you and LL connected and you saying like, dude, there's not an instrumental for Rock the Bells, I'm gonna make one. It just really it
Yeah.
reminded me of that.
So I had also done the same thing for Rakim. We'd done like a couple little guest spots we had scheduled to do, and it was the same thing. I was like, look, man, I'm just going to remake these things because I want you to be up there, whatever. So we'd figured it out. So I remade I Ain't No Joke, Paid in Full, and I'm scratching the da 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 da
Dope.
da
Of
chicka
course
chicka
you
da
are.
da chicka chicka da da. You know what I mean? But I was like, because I'm a purist as a fan, I want to see you in the best light possible.
Right.
And I remember going and seeing Rakim. I think it was on the Let the Rhythm Hit Him tour, and he was rhyming over his own vocals, and I was so bummed because I wanted to hear his tone is
Right.
such a specific tone. It's its own instrument.
Yeah.
And when I was hearing his tone over his tone in the live performance, I was like, I just wanted the pure, I wanted just his voice because it's an instrument. So I remember when he and I sat down, I was like, look, man, like, can we do this? And he was open to it. So I did Microphone Fiend, I did Ain't No Joke, and I did Paid in Full for our set. And I remade all those. And that was prior to meeting LL. So I'd already done that for Rakim for our little moments. And then I gave them the instrumentals like, here, man, take these. Like, feel free to use these
Dope.
because I want the rest of the world to be able to have them.
Dope.
So whether or not they made it to Kid Capri probably also took the rest of his catalog and did the best he could at doing instrumentals as well. And just, again, that to me was like the DJs wanting the MCs to be put in the best light. Cut Chemist has also done this. There's a lot of people who have done this, remade instrumentals.
Man, I can't thank you enough, man. I got a million things that I would love to ask you about. It's almost midnight here, and they set an alarm in my building, so if I leave after midnight, the whole neighborhood gets woken up. I don't I don't know Turkish well enough to ask like, can I have the code?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I do kind of have like a hard out, as it were. But man, I'm just so grateful to you, man, for being so generous and gracious, and it's funny, like, I only reach out to my friends on this. There's people that, I probably might say yes, but I only reach out to my friends and people that I really know, and, I'm really happy when somebody really shows who they are and the why and the heart part of the journey. Like, so many times you talk to people and they're like, "How'd you get into hip hop? And how'd you do this? And how did you do that? And how did you know?" But the why is what's most important to me, and that's the thing that translates to people that listen too, I think. Because not everybody is gonna be, underground rapper or, incredible DJ. But people are gonna do what they're doing. So connecting on the level of why and what it means is really great. And then also that emphasis on community, man, is just really, really culture and community are the things that really get lost. And so I'm always really grateful to highlight those things and to be with people that really practice it, not just, drop the hashtags, but that really understand what culture is and what community is. And so man, I'm just really grateful, brother.
Yeah, man. I feel like that's all we got really is culture. All we got is each other and this community and the culture that built us, right? So you have to honor it. You must honor it. I mean, again, it goes back to the shout out. You got to shout out and connect all the dots. You know, I'm happy to be in front, and I'm also happy to be in the back. I'm happy to be,
Mhm.
recognized. I'm also happy to not be to just be just to know that I'm doing the right thing. And that ebbs and flows. Certain times it's out front, certain times it's not. But knowing that I'm doing the honest work and doing the what's in my heart and doing it for the right reasons,
Mhm.
that's the thing that I think I'd probably say I'm the most happy about is that I'm grateful that I get up to every day and I'm able to do this work and people care enough to tune in and subscribe to what I'm doing or pay attention to it. Our conversations I know are not going to be like, so how'd you get started? Or I know that we're going to get into some, right out of the gate, we got right into it. So, and I love that. That's always been our thing, man, is having these deep conversations. And I appreciate that. Um, and I appreciate what you're doing as well, man. I appreciate the podcast, and I've been able to dig in a little bit and learn a little bit about it. So thank you to you. Thank you to all the people who rock with you, who are still here at the very end, listening to our last little bits of words. If you had to do it in 3 parts, or however you had to get to it, the fact that you're here at the end of the tunnel. Um, Here's the secret code for $1 million. Check it out.
Hey,
Whatever.
man, thank you so much, brother. I love you, man.
Love you back, man.
I love you. I love you.
Happy to be a part of it, brother. Anytime you need anything, man, I'm here. And let's get some music together, man. I'm gonna manifest this, man. I want us to do something together. It's time, and I think it would be magnificent.
I would love that. Special thanks to our brother Z Trip for being so gracious and generous with his time and thoughts and insights and wisdom and experience, and really with himself. It's a gift beyond words, and we can't thank you enough. We appreciate you, brother. We're brought to you as always by Zakat Foundation. ZAKAT.org is where you can go right now. Put something down on the earthquake relief for Turkey and for Syria, for all the people that are in need. We're also brought to you by BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/travelers. You'll get a discount and you can get down with this therapy journey. And also, we'll get a bonus to help the work that we do here. So it's really a win-win for everybody. Special thanks to Amna Mirza and to Mansoor Panawala, Darian Washington. Thank you, Ant, for letting us use this music. Thank you, Mark from Medina Hip Hop, for creating the logo. Thank you, Last Word, for helping out with graphic design stuff. Travelers Podcast is produced by Brendan Kelly, aka BK1, aka you need to bring yourself on this podcast so that we can let people know who you are and a little bit more about your story and just the really amazing way that this podcast came together and our partnership and everything else. There's people that listen every week and give me feedback, my friends. So shout out to Farouk in Edmonton, and shout out to Ida Rashid and Shane Atkinson in North Carolina, and to Khalees Rashad, my brother, Imam Khalees in Houston. Shout out to Rami Neshashibi in Chicago and Palestine and wherever he is in the world. And shout to Jamal and Ahmed Fahmi right here in Istanbul, and all of my people around the world that listen and give me feedback. We appreciate you beyond words. We love you. Ramadan is getting close. Uh, please pray for us and keep listening and keep sharing and all of that stuff. We love you all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.